Room elements are a special object type in Revit. A room is something that we all understand without too much explanation. We occupy rooms in our everyday lives. But what is a room really? Is it the four walls that surround it, or is it the space of the air thus surrounded? This is precisely the challenge that the Revit programmers have to solve when they were devising the room object. In Revit, we have special room elements that automatically conform to the shape of the surrounding geometry and thus accurately represent the space so enclosed. Rooms have some special behaviors in Revit, from the way that they are added to the model, to the way that they display in the views, to the way that you actually edit them. The basic behaviors of rooms will be the subject of this movie. The file I have open on screen is called 2-bedroom unit, and it represents just one of the units in our overall condo building. And we're going to go ahead and add some rooms to this file. I'm going to start on the Home tab, and over on the right-hand side, we have the Room button, and I'll go ahead and click on that. The shortcut for that is RM. And if I move my mouse out here somewhere, out in free space, you'll see that the room kind of appears as just sort of a generic blue rectangle. And in fact, if I went ahead and clicked it out there, I will get a room is not in a properly enclosed region message from Revit. Now, I could ignore this message. It doesn't actually prevent me from creating the room, but this room that would be created out here, first of all, would be hard to see, because you'll notice that unless I move my mouse into the general vicinity, it doesn't even appear that there's anything there. The only real indication that I have that there's something there is the room tag. So if you really need to create a freestanding room, you certainly can do it, but generally speaking, that's not really the right way to do it or the preferred way to do it. So let me go ahead and undo that. Go to Room, and show you what happens if instead I move my mouse inside the space somewhere. So you'll notice that that blue outline now highlights the enclosed spaces within the project file. So I'm going to go ahead and start here in this upper corner, and I'll click to place a room in that location, and then I'll place another one right here. Notice that the room tags do try and line up with one another. Place another here, and another here, and continue. Put one here in the utility room, in the two closets, and then let's talk about the challenge we have with this room here. If I were to add this room, you see how it's going to fill all of the remaining space. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that last room. Okay, so we don't want one big room that's going to fill all of that contained space. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to subdivide this space into smaller areas, and we do that with a tool called a room separation line. So you can find that on the drop down for the Room button on the Home tab as well. And a room separation line is a kind of model line in Revit that you simply draw 2 points like any other line. In fact, you can draw it any shape you like. And I can draw them like so. I'll press Escape one time. The default behavior is to chain. So it wants to draw several room separation lines in a chain sequence. And if I just press Escape one time, I break that chain. So what I'm going to do is just kind of close off each of the rooms that I want to generate with this. Now I'm going to continue out here and sort of trace over. Might need to press my tab key here. There we go. I'm going to trace over the patio because I want to actually add a room out there as well. And I need to do that because even though we see a line there, that's just the edge of the floor down below. That floor doesn't actually bound space around the room. It would bound the floor of the room, but it won't bound space on the three sides like the room separation lines would do. So without those three lines, we would get one of those freestanding rooms again. So now I can go back to my Room tool, and you'll see that these individual spaces now are recognized, and I'm able to add separate rooms in here for the living room and for the dining room and the kitchen. So that makes a little bit more sense in terms of labeling and so on. And then out here, because I added the room separation lines, we can see that we have our patio as well. So there's a few other things that we could look at. I mean, right now you can see that all of the rooms just have the generic name room, and the numbers occurred just in the order in which I placed them. I'm going to talk about numbering of rooms in another movie, so I'm going to kind of skip over that for right now. But as far as the naming goes, it's pretty easy. You could just simply select the room tag. That will let you reach in and change the room name. And so I'm going to just go in there and type what I want the name to be, foyer in that case, and kitchen in this case, and so forth and so on. I'm not going to do every room, but you get the general idea. The other way that you can change any of the parameters of the room, whether it be the name or the number, or even the parameters we're not seeing in the tag, would be to select the room. So if you move your mouse around on screen, you'll notice that when it pre-highlights, there's actually two things that pre-highlight. The outline of the room, which, if I get my mouse near there, I might be able to get, but you see how it's difficult to select it at that point because there's always other geometry in the way. Now, I could certainly press my tab key and eventually I would get to the room, but this X that they have crossing through the room, they've devised as a way to make it easier to select rooms. So that's really what that's about, those sort of indicators there. And if you click on it, that highlights the room and it tints in this shaded blue color. And then if we look over here on the properties palette, you're going to see all of the properties for that room, including its name. So this is another way that I could change the name, the number, any comments, who occupies the room, which is more of a commercial designation, but finishes, I could say that this floor finish is carpet and so forth, and fill in all those different settings. So when I click apply, that change will apply to the room that I had selected. You can add rooms easily enough. They will look for the bounding objects. If you don't have convenient bounding objects, you can use these room separation lines to create your boundaries. And then after you've added the rooms, you can easily select them either through the tags or through the room itself to make edits to any of their internal properties.